This is the FM Gold channel of All India Radio. In the program News Analysis, now we bring you a discussion on Indian Ocean, a critical maritime transportation link. The participants are Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, when you see the Indian participation in the Indian Ocean Conference, which is attended by some 35 countries, and we see participation from countries like the US, Australia, and the Indian Ocean region, which is specifically strategic to India's viewpoint, how do you see the importance of this conference and this entire region to India's security?
This is a very important second conference of this nature that is being held. The last one was organized in Singapore last year in 2016. And this year it's being organized. Actually, the organization is by some think tanks and civil society organizations, academic organizations. Like from here we have the India Foundation that is organizing it. And from Singapore it is the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies. And also a think tank, NIFS, from Colombo. They are the principal organizers. But that notwithstanding, this has the support of a large number of governments. For instance, when it started yesterday, there were the inaugural speeches. In addition to our Minister of External Affairs, Sushma Swaraj, the Sri Lankan Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, he also spoke, and also the Vice President of Seychelles and the Foreign Minister of Singapore. And today at the valedictory session, the address will be delivered by the Sri Lankan President, Maithripala Sirisena. So, notwithstanding the fact that it is being organized by some think tanks, in terms of its billing and in terms of its profile, it has high profile. And that is because this issue, the subject of Indian Ocean, is extremely important. India has a coastline of about 7,500 kilometers, and more than 90% of our trade is conducted through the oceans. In fact, all our shipments of oil, of energy, we get from the seas. So having a safe, a secure, and a peaceful Indian Ocean is extremely significant for India, and this is what we would hope our participation in this conference would hope, that we would be able to both project our own interests and also enter into significant collaborations and partnerships with other countries to ensure that there is sustainable development in the Indian Ocean.
As you pointed out, the statements of the Sri Lankan leadership, and we have the Sri Lankan Prime Minister, where he, in his address at the Indian Ocean Conference, he sought a stable order for the freedom of navigation. And we have later statements coming from him where he has specifically said that the ports in Sri Lanka cannot be used as military bases by any foreign countries. Even though he has not mentioned China specifically, the message seems to be that Sri Lanka is probably trying to lay to rest some concerns, some fears in India that the development of ports which Sri Lanka has been giving to China and could potentially be used against India. Perhaps that was a misapprehension and we really don't have anything to fear anymore. Would that be the reading?
I agree with you. That would be the reading, but that having been said, I would like to continue to be vigilant and watchful and not to let down our guard. Because if you remember that before this government of Maithripala Sirisena had come in position in early 2016, in 2015, it was reported that a nuclear-powered submarine had come and docked on the shores of Sri Lanka. And even Sri Lankan authorities were not aware of it. Their permission was not sought. This had angered the Sri Lankan authorities also. Now, Hambantota, as the Sri Lankan Prime Minister also said, that it will not be used as a military base, but it will be used only for commercial purposes. I think this is very significant because Sri Lanka finds itself, as a result of its development of the Hambantota port, in a debt trap, because it has been constructed by the Chinese and all the funding and all the money has come from China, and Sri Lanka neither is it able to generate maritime business and commerce from Hambantota, so it is not really in a position to pay back the loans that it had got from there. It has been now the port, the management and the ownership of the port has been given for many, many decades in the future to China. So I think this statement coming from the Sri Lankan Prime Minister is very reassuring, because we have been expressing our serious concerns and anxieties to Sri Lanka in terms of, because we can see whether it is the Pearl of Strings or it is some of the other ports that China is developing, whether it is Gwadar or it is developing its base in Djibouti. So this would have been extremely, if China was able to use it, which would adversely impact upon India's security, it would have been a matter of great concern for us.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, we also see that even though the Doklam crisis has diffused and things seem back to normal, what seems to be a certain apprehension is that China is growing very belligerent. There is a newfound aggression in the Chinese establishment, and we saw that during the 2 months of Doklam, we had a lot of aggressive statements. Then the behavior in South China Sea, it has upset a lot of countries, the Philippines, Japan, Australia, India. And if you look at the Indian Ocean Conference or the nations coming together in the Indian Ocean region to discuss things, do you feel that the coming together can serve as a counterbalance to China's aggressive behavior in the South China Sea? Do you think that could kind of balance out China?
Well, yes, because you would recall that when the External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj, she made her statement yesterday, she said that the prime responsibility for the security, stability and peace in this region should be, the prime responsibility should rest with the countries in the region. Of course, we are not averse to having cooperation and collaboration with other countries also, but the prime responsibility should rest with the countries, and of course, India occupies a pivotal place in this area. And what you said very rightly, that China has been getting rather belligerent and aggressive on a large number of fronts, and that has created wariness amongst its neighbors, particularly maritime neighbors you mentioned, Philippines, Vietnam, Japan, even South Korea. So the manner in which India conducted itself will give courage to the other countries that they should not be cowering down under threats that are emanating from there. Because I think the Doklam crisis got prolonged because China never expected that India will come in and dig its heels in and stop its soldiers from the road construction. The lesson would have gone to China also, and this would give, as I said, greater strength to the other countries which have similar issues and problems on territorial control with China as we have on our land borders.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, we also see that in the recent few years, the presence of the navies, whether it is the United States, India, China, Japan, Australia, that has increased in the Indian Ocean region. Do you feel that as the naval presence of all these countries, which are strategically important today in a multipolar world, is increasing, do you feel India also needs to balance out its options? This is right at our doorstep, and we find all these countries increasing their naval presence. How does India deal with a more militarized neighborhood in its ocean region?
We would really need to ensure that the environment stays benign. Many other countries are coming in because there have also been problems as far as Indian Ocean is concerned. We've had the issue of piracy, we have had the issue of trafficking, we have had the issue of drugs, narcotics. So a large number of them. And if we look at the manner in which the Indian Ocean is used, about 1/2 of all container traffic across the globe traverses through Indian Ocean. About 1/3 of all cargo gets to its destinations through the Indian Ocean. And about 3/4 of the energy the world trades in is transported through Indian Ocean. Even as far as India is concerned, I had mentioned about more than 90% of our global trade is conducted through the seas. But even for countries which are out of this region, for them also about 3/4 of their commerce, or maybe it's closer to half of the total commerce, goes through the Indian Ocean. So it becomes very important for the other countries also to maintain peace and stability and security. We need to develop some peaceful norms so that we do not militarize the area, we do not weaponize the area, and in that sense, international cooperation, whether it is with China, whether it is with the United States, UK, Germany, because all these countries are participating in this. And of course, collaborative efforts for sustainable exploitation and harnessing of the resources, mineral resources, fisheries, food, medicines that exist. I think that is the way forward.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, we've also seen that India, along with Japan, Australia and the United States, have in the recent past stepped up the maritime cooperation, whether it is military exchanges or it is exercises in the Indian Ocean. And a lot of analysts feel that this exercise is primarily aimed at giving a signal to China. This is the cooperation that exists between Japan, India, Australia, and it's a signal to China maybe not to mess too much in this region. We also have the visit of the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe coming up. When you see this strategic play going on, we have India, which is now seeking greater cooperation from Japan, to some extent greater cooperation from Australia also in combating or maybe in just sending a message to China. Do you think this succeeds? Because we also see that the aggression that China has shown doesn't seem to go down, or do you think that's just a public posturing from them?
No, I don't think it's public posturing. I think China feels that its time has come and that it needs to be the undisputed big power, superpower, and it should exercise supremacy and dominance in Asia, and then only that will be reflected as far as the rest of the world is concerned. And it is on those lines that the Belt Road Initiative, the forum for which was organized in Beijing in May, this is to expand its own influence on a much wider scale. That is what has been done. As far as the recent Malabar exercises in the Indian Ocean, in Arabian Sea, between navies of India, US and Japan, Australia was not included. Australia, as the listeners would be aware, participated in the 2007 exercises, but when China had expressed its displeasure, then Australia had moved out. But now Japan has become an integral component of these exercises. Last year we had them in the East China Sea on the coast of Japan. This year it has been here. Basically, it is for China to read whatever it wishes to in these exercises, but these are basically to promote interoperability amongst the navies of these three countries, because challenges and threats are increasing. We also have non-state actors coming in. So these three navies and armies, whenever the need arises, there is greater interoperability amongst them. You would recall that some of the earlier joint exercises between India and the United States were basically to provide humanitarian assistance and to act in times of disaster relief. You would recall that in 2004 December, when we had the tsunami, then India and the United States, their navies, had been able to work together in a very efficient manner. And so I think the objectives are a large number of them, and basically to confront the challenges and problems that might appear.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, would you characterize the Indian Ocean Conference as something of an attempt by India to reframe its Indian Ocean engagements? That be the correct way of looking at what is happening in Sri Lanka now?
There are other instruments also that we have been working on. For instance, we started with the Indian Ocean Rim Initiative. It was known as Indian Ocean Rim Arc of Regional Cooperation, and today it is the Indian Ocean Rim Association. The first summit meeting was held very recently in June in Jakarta. So there are a number of platforms where we are interacting with our interlocutors with different countries. It is the common interest of countries of the region to ensure that there is no militarization, to ensure that there is peace and security, and that the development of the marine resources is done in a sustainable manner.
And with these thoughts, we bring the discussion to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
You are listening to a discussion on Indian Ocean, a critical maritime transportation link. The participants were Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website, newsonair.nic.in. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.